This is Steve Smith, and I'm here with John Chattel in Silver Spring. I don't know where everyone else is, but I see on the attendees we have Andrew Ross, John Rowe, Ken Pavel, Vanessa Arias, Wes Frazier, and somebody whose name is not entered in yet. So the purpose of this session here is to speak to you folks who are affiliated with the National Water Center to describe to you the NOAA Projects Repository in the virtual lab and the FY15 performance measure pilot that's being conducted in NOAA for research to application. So I'm going to give some introductory slides to give you the context for this effort and this capability in the virtual lab, and then we're going to hand it over to Mike Giebler to give some training on how you or others in your organization can enter in your research and development projects into this projects repository, because that's really the goal here. We've asked all the relevant organizations within Weather Service to contact the project owners of the various projects being worked on in your organization to assist us in capturing these projects and inputting the data into this database. The same sort of thing is happening in the other NOAA line offices as well, but we're sort of in charge of the effort within the National Weather Service. So go ahead, John. So let me say, so what is the NOAA Projects Repository in the VLab? And it's basically a web interface that has two purposes. One is to allow NOAA employees to investigate and compare R&D projects that are active in the agency for the purpose of improving collaboration and situational awareness in the so-called R2A arena, and I'll describe what R2A means in a minute. So NOAA and Weather Service in particular has been criticized in a number of independent external studies as not having a good handle on the innovation and development that's occurring within the agency, so that different facets, different groups, different people start off in working on projects and expending resources on efforts, basically being ignorant that there may be some other group or some other person working on the same thing. So this can lead to redundant efforts and wasted resources. So we want to try to improve that situation by having a centrally located database where people can consult, or that people can consult and sort of see what's out there before they start their own independent effort. The second purpose is to allow the owners of these projects in NOAA to input their data into this central location in compliance with this NOAA administrative order, and to assist the FY15 research application performance measure pilot that I'll describe shortly. So research to application is defined to mean either one of three flavors: research to operations, which is the main category that we're dealing with in the Weather Service; research to commercialization, which is the application of patents, licenses, and creatives, etc., to commercialize some of the R&D that gets developed. And then the last category, research to other uses, is a sort of catch-all category, but not insignificant in that NOAA does a lot of this actually, where research and development is done that eventually is applied to government policy and regulations, resource management, public education, etc. Next slide. There are sort of three different transition models that can be described for these different flavors. The R2O is best described as a pass the baton model, where the source the R&D works closely with a transition partner or an operational entity to hand off that technology, software, whatever, to the group that's going to be maintaining it in operations. And so this requires a very close coordination, a transition plan that has specific milestones, deadlines, etc., and spells out all the details required for the transition to be successful. And if that plan is not followed well and executed well, then the transition can run into problems. The model for tech transfer, or the R2C, is governed by the laws that cover patents, etc. And NOAA has the Technology Partners Office, which are the experts on all of that. So if you have something that is a potential commercialization target, then you can consult with them to find out what the steps are in doing that kind of a transition. And then the last category is sort of an undefined model, you know, where I describe as a letter in the mail or a message in the bottle sort of thing, where you're developing, maybe doing some research for a group of stakeholders, but it's not quite sure, you know, how they will eventually use that information or at all. So an important concept is that we really, you know, we receive funding from Congress every year to do R&D, and so we would like to measure what our performance is in this area. So I like to describe that what we have in NOAA is sort of an R&D ecosystem where we have employees and line offices and research labs and cooperative institutes and hundreds of operational systems and different groups doing R&D. And together in a sort of diverse way, new innovations are developed and new ideas are generated, and some of those in research labs or whatever, sometimes in universities, and they are proven through testing and experimental systems or prototypes, and eventually there's a decision made that they should become embedded in our operational systems, and then we want to transition them to our operations. So this system in NOAA is very diverse. A weather service, it's very diverse just within the National Weather Service. But we don't have a real good handle on how well it sort of works. So that represents sort of a gap in NOAA's ability to demonstrate to Congress how well we're spending these funds that they give us every year. So one way to consider how to measure our performance is to develop a kind of a conceptual framework. The one that we have proposed in NOAA is based on this concept of a technical or sometimes technology readiness level, which was originally implemented within NASA. And it sort of lines up on the phases of a development cycle, sort of going from a maturity of research, things that are very in a conceptual mode, to development, to demonstration, and eventually to applications. In the case of operations, or R2O, it would be operations. So a particular project sort of has this life cycle where it just increases its maturity as you go up this sort of pyramid structure, and there's increasing costs to move it up the ladder, so to speak, and particularly going that last mile from a demonstration phase to actual application. So, next slide. There's kind of two ways to consider here, two extremes of a spectrum. One is something like this, where you could say is an effective R2A within NOAA would be something where you had lots of projects at a sort of researchy level, lots of creativity taking place down there because it doesn't cost a lot, but then only a small percentage, relatively small percentage of those actually move into development, and then those that are developed then move into some demonstration mode. And if they're successfully demonstrated, then in any given fiscal year, you would like to say that 100% of those would be transitioned into operations because they were technically mature and ready for operations to take advantage of them. Next slide.
John?
The opposite. Sure, go ahead.
And this is Ken about. Just real quick, I guess you said earlier that this is required. Am I correct in understanding that you're saying that every single R2O or R2A activity in Weather Service is being mandated to use VLAB as a project repository?
This is a pilot, Ken. We are currently operating as it's a pilot program, so that not every project or program, not every project would have to be resident in here. But if the pilot were to be successful, NOAA basically is looking for that eventual sort of mandatory registration of projects in this repository.
Right. And I guess another question is just in terms of what level of granularity are you looking for? If we start talking about the types of projects that have to go in front of the project management board, and that's at a very high level. The multi-million-dollar projects. We have our centralized water forecasting demonstration, which had right now we're getting $4 million roughly a year. But along with that, there's we are spinning up literally dozens of projects, and I'm trying to make sure that as we start trying to go through this, I'm trying to understand, and these are things that are primarily being run inside our FMC only. So I'm trying to make sure that I understand whether where the VLAB space, where I don't want to say boundaries, but where the real intersection is intended to be.
Yeah. So this is a NOAA project. It has been blessed by Dr. Spinrad and Kathy Sullivan. So if it's touching upon a NOAA activity, it is sort of in this play space and expected to participate if possible. So we recognize that depending on the organization, that could be hundreds, if not multiple hundreds of projects that we're talking about. But the important thing to recognize is that this is how we are applying our funding from Congress to carry out NOAA's mission. And the idea here is that by registering these projects as such, we can come up with metrics that we can provide to Kathy Sullivan, et cetera, to take down to the Hill to say, this is what NOAA is doing with these R&D dollars, and this is the good story we have to tell. We have a deep and broad sort of pool of projects that are being transitioned into operations for the betterment of the tax-paying public. So we know that's happening across the agency, but we currently have no way to track in an aggregate sense what is going on. The only way we can do that is to gather the data at this project level. And the only way we can get the data at the project level is going to the project owners. So
okay. So the main goal from this is to register the projects with VLAB, as opposed to trying to really having and then there's a second part of what are all the cool things that you guys have put into VLAB that we could potentially use, help the tools for project managers. It sounds like there's two different pieces.
That's right. This is not a VLAB effort per se. This is a NOAA pilot project, and we're just using the VLAB as the vehicle by which to carry out this pilot project.
Okay, thank you.
So,
that's a good clarification for me.
Yeah, sure. You're welcome. So just wrapping up this argument, thing here. So the opposite sort of picture in what might be going on in NOAA is this sort of ineffective model where you have a lot of researchy projects that rapidly move up into a development phase inappropriately because it costs more to do that, et cetera. And then many of those quickly become demonstrations, and then they stagnate. They sit in that demonstration mode sometimes for years, diluting the research funding that could be used to do new things. And we sort of have a bottleneck. Very few things actually in a given fiscal year go from demonstration to application. So this is a picture we would hopefully not see in NOAA, but we don't know. And that's the basic question we're trying to answer. We want to know, what does this picture look like for NOAA in order to decide, what things we need to change or where we can improve to have a more efficient and effective sort of R2O or R2A framework within the agency. Next slide. So just to wrap up my part here so we can get to the training. So why is it important that the National Water Center participate in this pilot project? And number one is so that the Water Center itself gets credit for the R&D innovation projects that they develop and which eventually may transition to operations. So there's a lot of things that are going on there, and this way, because the results of this pilot is going to be briefed out at the Sullivan level at the end of the fiscal year. So, I don't know exactly what that form will take, but it's to our advantage, not just for the Water Center, but for all of Weather Service to put in a good faith effort to make this pilot successful. So that's that second bullet. So the Weather Service contributes to the effort of NOAA leadership to obtain more funding for R2O and make us look good. And then lastly, we want to we're looking for the Water Center to participate so we can improve this R2O function within NOAA. So it's safe to say the Water Center has very unique aspects to it, which are need to be accounted for and need to be addressed. And so by your participation, that's guaranteed. We will see the diversity of projects that you're dealing with, and therefore they'll be included in this overall effort. And hopefully you won't be left out, and et cetera. So this is sort of, I think there's a really good story to tell, particularly in Weather Service, and I'm sure within the Water Center. But we can't really articulate that good story unless the Water Center provides these projects to the database. So I'm going to stop there, and we're going to switch over to Mike Giebler to actually walk you through the interface. But I can take any more questions at this point while we do that.
Hey, Steve, this is John Rowe.
Go ahead, John.
How are you doing, Steve?
I'm doing fine.
I think that, at least in our case here, it makes most sense to address this kind of a need and participation to our program management office at the NWC, which are the people who are looking at this demo right now.
Okay.
I think it would be our group who would choose among the different projects of what makes the most sense from an R2A perspective to register in this database, and as opposed to just kind of gathering all the program managers up. And in fact, it may even be just our office ourselves who make the entries and do the registration of the projects. That's just kind of the perspective I see from looking at it so far.
Thanks, John, for that. And that's perfectly fine. The interface allows for even one person to enter in all the projects for a given organization. It's designed for that. So you can certainly implement it that way within the Water Center if that makes the most sense. We have no problem with that.
Okay.
It's designed so that it can work that way, or you can have individuals within the organization do that, however you want to do it. The plan is there's a workflow involved here, so that once the and Mike's going to go through this in a second, but once the project is registered and active, at some point periodically whoever is the registered owner of the project will get a ping basically asking if there's any update that needs to be accounted for within the project. Has it gone from TRL 7 to 8, for example, or has it actually transitioned to operations? And so, so that's built in and baked into the system in order to make sure that the data are fresh and relevant for the metrics we're looking for. So, Mike, why don't you go ahead with the demonstration?
Okay. So for today's demonstration, I want to show you how to use the project repository, specifically how to navigate through here and locate projects that have already been entered into the repository. And then secondly, how to actually enter your own project into the repository, show you the steps on how to do that. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is the project repository. This is the main view of it. And the bottom section there, you can see, is basically a table listing all the projects that have already been entered into the repository. If I scroll down a little bit, we have it's a page-by-page interface where we're listing 10 items per page, and you can navigate through the different pages at the bottom. We have a next and previous buttons at the bottom. If you're just navigating through here, you can also skip all the way to the end, go to the last page if you wanted to do that. And that's the basic navigation through the different pages. Also, to help you find projects, we have some sorting features. On the top of the table, we have certain columns that are sortable, and you can just click on these ones that have the underline. That indicates that's a sortable field. If you click on that, it'll sort first in ascending order, and then if you click again, it'll go in descending order. And that's probably more obvious if I went on project name here. And there it is in descending order here. And then probably that makes you still sort through a whole bunch of different pages. We currently have 8 pages in here. A better way of finding projects is to use some of the search features. On the top toolbar here, we have a global search, and this will search through most of the fields that show up in the table. I think the first 5 or 5 columns are in this search criteria here. So if you just type in there some search criteria, it's searched through here, and we have this Blizzard Severity Index project that was located by entering the Blizzard keyword in there. And this gives you the results. And once you find a project that you're interested in looking at, this first column has a hyperlink that'll take you to the details of that project. You can also get to the details by this drop-down arrow on the right, where you can click the view option. Either one works. It brings you to this same page here, and that presents you with the details of that project. And in the upper corner, we have a back arrow to get you back to where you were. This gives us back to the original listing here. Also, we have an advanced search, which kind of helps you kind of narrow down some search criteria where you can pick different fields to search on. For an example here, we can pick an agency. I'm looking at NCO and click search. This is for the applying or receiving organization. And it just returns results. As you can see, that just with that column has that populated. But doing that, we still get a lot of results. We still have 4 pages, so we might want to narrow down that even further. So maybe we know another column, for example, the Eastern region has the source organization. Click search again, and that narrows it down even further based on those 2 items that we had entered in, the 2 different fields. And now we're just getting a single result by doing that. So that just kind of gives you an example of how to search through the projects if you're interested in seeing what's out there now and seeing if there's something that's related to what you're working on too. So those are the basic navigation features. We also have additional sorting where you can sort on a couple of fields. This is handy if you've just created a project. If you sort actually in descending on the create date, it'll sort, if you just created a project, it'll sort that to the very top. And we'll actually see that after I add a project here in the demonstration. But to add a project, we have this on the toolbar. We have just an add project button. If you click on that, it'll take you to a form to enter your data in here. And you can see it's a multi-step form. There's 5 steps. And this first one is just basic information. What's the project name and a quick description. And you can navigate through this data entry form with the next and previous buttons at the bottom. Or you can navigate by clicking on the different steps up at the top. And on the step for the project owner, it defaults to information, populating information from the user that's logged into the system. But if you're entering data for somebody else, you can change this information if you want to another person. And then step 3 is probably the most detailed portion of the data entry. We're selecting the line office first, and then the different organizations for the different parts of the project, the project owner, the R&D source organization, and things like that. And to enter this data, we have it's a drop-down field where it lists everybody that's been entered in here, and you can see that's pretty lengthy, but it's also an auto-complete field, so if you know the some key letters in the acronym, it'll narrow that down. As you can see, as I type those in, it'll narrow this down and easily identify that that organization. So those are the different organizations, and then you'd select if it, what type of a project is it. Is it an R2O project? And if it's an R2O project, this target system will be required, and that works the same way as the organizations. It has a drop-down that you can search through, or it's also searchable.
Are you able to enter your own answer for target?
Yeah, so what that is if yours doesn't appear in the list, this applies to both the organizations and the target systems. At this point, you can click this Add Target System button, and I'll go ahead and do that now. I was planning on doing that in the demonstration. So
let me jump in here. This is Steve. So 2 important points with regard to what Mike's talking about here. One is for the target systems, we're looking for where is the thing going to run. So this is sometimes a point of confusion in our experience up to this point. So sometimes people say, oh, my target system is the GFS model. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the hardware that it's going to run on. So if somebody's developing a new version of the GFS model, their target system is going to be the WCOS, the supercomputer that NCEP runs. So we're really looking for the heavy lift kind of operational systems where it eventually goes. So that's one thing to mention. The other thing to mention is on these organizations. The source organization is like who developed the original idea, whatever. So it sometimes can be, like the water center's, hydro lab, or it could be a university, or could be GSD and OAR. It could be NSSL. So who developed the original thing? The transition partner is the organization that's actually, they're the ones working with the receiving organization to actually carry out the transition. So if it's say something developed at the water center, and some group of employees at the water center are working with NCO to put something on the supercomputer, then the transition partner would be the water center, and the receiving or the applying organization is NCO. So that's sort of the basics. The R&D source and the transition partner, and in some cases the applying organization, could all be the same organization. A common one is that the R&D source is the same as the transition partner. So just keep in mind, so there's those three flavors of organization that we're trying to capture. So go ahead, Mike.
Okay. All right. So I did go through steps. I added the target system. You saw that there were just three fields to fill out. Two of them were required. One was optional. And now that should be available in this drop-down list. And there it is, the one that I just entered. So that's available to you right away to use. And then the last item on this page is the TRL level, and that's a drop-down list. We have the 9 different levels, and with a brief description next to it here to give you a cue of which one to pick on that. Step 4 is relevant if there's a transition plan associated with the project, and you can select yes, no, or pending on that. If you have an anticipated transition date, you can enter that here by the default is no transition date. Uncheck that, and then that activates this field here where you can enter the date. And also, if you have a document that documents the transition plan, you can expand this node right here and then browse to that file and attach that to this project. And then step 5 is just optionally adding tags and categories to aid in searching and categorizing this project. We have, for the top section is categories, which are predefined, and you can click select there and select from predefined categories.
I've got a question about the transition plan. Do you have a specific file or a document that is in use in mind, or is this just the, generally speaking, what's your plan? The reason I'm asking is that we're developing a whole series of the project documentation that we're going to be using for water center projects right now, and I don't think that there's one that is explicitly called transition plan.
Yeah. Ken, this is Steve. So the answer is we do not have a specific format in recognition that currently across NOAA there's just so many different flavors of this that we couldn't dictate or develop a global format. So we're asking people to upload whatever would be sort of the closest thing to a transition plan in their own minds or their organization's definition.
That's perfect.
And sometimes they take the form of just a quad chart. Other times they're much more elaborate and extensive. So whatever water center views as the appropriate thing that documents the plan to implement something would be fine.
Great, thanks.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, and then on this categorization step, the categories are predefined, and then the tag section down here are free form. You can enter anything that you want here. to tag this project. And again, this is all optional and not required on this step 5.
Can you search on tags?
Pardon me?
Can you search on tags?
Yes, you can. I'll show you that here in just a second. Okay, so that's been saved, and then the default is to take you back to the form again in case you want to enter a second one. To get back to the data, just click this back button up here. It'll take you to that original page, and at this point the default sort is by the modified date in descending order, so yours should sort all the way to the top at this point. And then for searching on the tags, we don't have that in the advanced search area, but in this global search up here, the tags are activated on here. It's probably not a good example since we also have demo in the project name, but if that tag was unique and different from the project name, it would show up here.
I'm sorry if I missed it, but was there a spot for entering the funding source?
We're not capturing that information. Well, I'm not. Is it just the organization? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I was referring to some of the data calls I know Paula Davidson and Carla Kirby go through each year, and it's actually in each project code definition in CBS. There are fields associated with whether this is an whether there's R&D associated with that project code.
So Ken, to answer your question, no, we're not requiring any financials, or no funding for this pilot. It's possible in the future that may be included, but right now the answer is no, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay. Yeah, then just for your own information, you may want to talk to Carla and Paula about this and see if this is something that can help Weather Service, help their part of the stuff move along.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, so so this project's been entered, and as you can see on the status, it's a pending status, and that kind of refers back to what Steve mentioned earlier, is that there's a simple workflow in this process. So in a pending status, since I created this, I can see it. Also, I'm a system administrator, so I can see it. But other users can't see it at this point in this data grid. It needs to be approved first, and Steve is the approver for National Weather Service, and he's just doing a quick sanity check to make sure things look okay. If you've created a new target system but a similar one already existed, he might just double check with you on that. That's just an example. Once it's been created, you as the creator can edit it, and you can do that by this drop down arrow on the right. Click on that and you'll have an edit option, and it takes you to that same form that we saw earlier, and you can edit any of these fields and save at any point. You don't have to go through all of the steps anymore. You can just make a single change if you want to, and then hit the save button. So I'll just change the TRL level here and click save.
So that's a really, this is a really important point as well. Even after the project is approved, you can go in there and edit things. So, and we encourage that. If you have, a new transition plan, or you want to change anything, you can just go to that arrow button and select edit and change it, and it's fine. So in a sense, you don't have to anguish over, did I get the right TRL this time or something else. You can sort of submit it, and then if you change your mind or something else comes along that requires a modification, you just go in there and edit it. You know, in addition, once the thing has been approved, you see there's this column for attached documents. You can upload other project artifact documents, etc., or anything else, PowerPoint presentations at any time.
Okay.
Are you
so go ahead.
I was just going to ask, are you anticipating periodic data calls? No, please go, other than just simply, hey, you know, you haven't updated this in a couple of months. Or is there actually going to be, with this pilot, trying to go through and Dr. Sullivan's asking for, you know, something for, you know, by next Tuesday. Please go through and review or something like that.
Not at this time, Ken. All we're intending for this pilot is we'll probably in September, October issue you know, one more call for updating or your projects, so that if the TRL has increased or the transition has been completed, that it's reflected within the database. That's the only thing we're for the pilot.
Thanks.
Okay, so Steve had mentioned. Whoops, sorry.
So Steve, this is John. When the projects go into this, whether it's a pilot or it's gone beyond that, projects just stay there even after they're totally complete and in operations. They just stay there, right?
Yeah. So good question, John. The status, there's actually like 5 different status states for each project, and yeah, I think Mike may be showing that, right? So there they are, and there's active, terminated, pending, completed, and dormant. So active is what it means that the project's ongoing. Completed means that it has reached TRL 9 and it's, you know, in the case of R2O, it's operational. Terminated would be a project that was ended before it became, you know, got to TRL 9. Dormant would be a project that when we went and asked for somebody to update, we got no response, so it's sort of an unknown status. So in theory, the completed projects will just remain in there and be reflected as completed along with their completion date. So we haven't yet determined how long to keep, you know, projects that were either terminated or completed within the active database. At this point, it's they're going to be there. We're not going to delete them, but at some point, we'll probably have to come up with a you know, some rule about how long they should be there, or how long they should be visible within the interface. That's another thing to keep in mind here, is that any NOAA employee, because any NOAA employee can access the VLab, they can access this repository. The project data, once it becomes active, is visible to anyone who has a NOAA LDAP credential.
So do you really mean that terminated and completed is tied to TRL 9? Is that a requirement?
Completed is, go ahead.
Because there can be projects that don't have an intention of operations. Maybe they stop at a demonstration and that's still completed, but it's not really terminated.
That's a good point. Have to think about that one.
Yeah, I agree that
maybe the word is not the right connotation. I see what you're saying. Yeah, we may have to make a note of that.
Depends on the intention of the project.
Right,
I mean, I realize that most of them should be headed toward operations, but there are cases where that's not true.
Yeah, good point. That's why we're doing a pilot.
Good.
This is Ken again. Just another question in terms of scope of what should be put in as a project. For example, I'll give 2 cases. One is that every 6 months we we get a new release of of Fuse software, and we incorporate that with updates for chips. Where the source is the destination clearly is to put it into operations via AWIPs. These are in some ways almost an O&M type project, but we could consider it a project to go through and do this. Should that be on there? And let me ask a similar question at the same time: is what about the quarterly AWIPS builds? If we're going through and adding or fixing a DR in the MPE code or something else, and that's would that be considered a project that should be in this repository?
So bug fixes and adaptive maintenance would not be, we're not looking for that. We're really looking for new capabilities or enhanced capabilities. If it's just something that's broken that's being fixed, or it's just an updating of an operating system or some routine maintenance, that would not be, we're not looking for that. So there's some judgment you got to apply on whether or not something fits that bill or not, but that's the general idea. We're looking at new things, R&D projects that are leading to new capabilities, new products and services, new something in general. And just speaking a bit more on the nature of the project. So if you have like something like chips, and it has new versions that go out, etc. Each one of the versions, or if it's a new module of chips or something like that, it would be a separate project that should be defined separately, because in theory, that enhancement of chips would have its own TRL lifecycle. It would begin at some stage and eventually would be reach its TRL9 and be applied. So there, in theory, there could be multiple chips projects within this database every year, as long as the chips exist. So sub-projects are of major programs, if you will, are what we don't want to see. For example, like GOZAR is one project that has 3,000 sub-projects implied in it. We want to see the individual sub-components or sub-projects. So the idea to keep in mind is that each project has its own unique TRL that advances along. So it can't be dependent on some other project. If it's dependent on another project, it needs to be its own project. If that made sense, and I'm not sure it did. So Mike, you want to show the reports thing?
Oh, right, yes.
We didn't bake the donuts recently. Oh, that's actually loading. So while this is loading up, this thing takes a little bit if it hasn't been accessed, but this is a dynamic reports that provide some basic metrics in the database in the dynamic. But at the end of this pilot, we're going to, as I was mentioning, alluding to, we're going to have some metrics to provide to Kathy Sullivan and Dr. Spinrad, and the idea is to sort of develop a baseline of these metrics from which we could develop performance measures. That's sort of the general idea. Whether or not that's how long it'll take to develop the baseline here, because again, we just don't know what the current picture is. But even having an idea of what the current picture is will be in and of itself a benefit for NOAA, so that we can say, at a minimum, we'll be able to say that there were X number of transitions which occurred in FY such and such, and the nature of those transitions, which agency, which line office was the biggest player. So they did load up there. Mike, you want to just walk them through that?
All right. So out here in our production server, currently we have just 4 reports. The first one just shows the number of projects that are at each technical readiness level. It's a simple bar graph with a chart at the bottom showing the total number of projects at the bottom, breakdown of projects by the TRL. If you hover over the bar, I don't know if you can see it on here, but it'll do a little tooltip to show you the number, because sometimes it's kind of hard to see exactly what that number is by the
We can see it. We can
here.
see it.
Okay, great. The one on the right here is same thing, only as a percentage. So it's what percent of the projects are at TRL level 1. That's 6.33%. of them are at 1. At TRL level 7, looks like we have 22.78 at that level, percentage of them. And the chart down at the bottom. And then the next two reports are, we break down the TRL levels into different phases. And at the very bottom here, we have kind of a key here. So TRL level 1 and 2 is at the research phase, 3 through 5 is development, 6 through 8 is demonstration, and then TRL level 9 is basically implementation. So this are the same two graphs, only broken down by phase instead of the 9 TRL levels. So you can see the different phases here. And this is a count. 46 are in the demonstration phase. And then on the right, it's the percentages here. So most of them are in the demonstration phase right now at 58%. And we are in the process of just designing some more reports, so they'll be coming out here pretty soon. So
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
So I think we pretty much covered the basics. Did you folks have any additional questions or comments?
This is John again. Yeah, that was my question, is what kind of time scale are you looking at?
You mean to suspend states, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we have to try to figure out how to fit it into the labor available here, so.
Yeah, okay, well, so you've already missed the first suspense date.
Oh, well, right on then, right.
Yeah. It's tongue-in-cheek, John. So, look, we understand it's July 1st. If you guys could have a first cut by the end of the month, we would be thrilled. The end of the pilot is September 30th, so if you have nothing in by September 30th, we won't be thrilled.
That's not thrilling, no.
Yeah, so you know, do your best. I think once you get in there, you're going to find it, you know, pretty easy to do. So it's really going to be in the consideration up front. What do you want to include and what you don't want to include? But if you have something in there by the end of this month, whether it's your first cut or your final cut, then that would be great.
I think we can do that. We have a regular project management meeting every Monday, and the group that's here on the demonstration can talk about how to achieve that when we meet next Monday.
That sounds perfect. Anything else?
On these reports, can you filter by any of the organizations?
On the reports, not currently. Currently, the reports are all at cover the entire database. That's something that we can take down as a potential requirement for future enhancements, though. And that may be something that other organizations would want to do. You can search, you can, using the search function, you can search by, Mike, maybe you want to show that, you know, search the projects by the R&D source or by the, can you search by who submitted it? I forget.
The project owner.
Yeah, you could search by the project owner, which in the case would, for the water center, that would, so, that's the project owner, right? So the name of the person.
Right. What about maybe the source organization, possibly?
Yeah, you can search by the source organization. So MDL, for example. And I'm guessing for the water center, you guys probably going to be the source of quite a bit of what you enter. But in terms of the reports function, no, we don't have that yet, but we could consider it. I'm sure as time goes on, we're probably going to get more requests for that sort of thing because organizations, and that's a good thing. I don't want to discourage it at all, because if this turns out to be useful beyond the immediate purpose here, and people want to, say, let's use this for tracking our own internal projects, we would love to get that kind of feedback and endorsement, in which case we can, wholeheartedly go out and develop those sorts of capabilities beyond, this NOAA level sort of thing. There's obviously a lot of potential for doing, not just looking ahead to, just so you get an idea of what we're thinking about. This is resident in the virtual lab, so these projects we are intending, if this project that's being entered here already has like a Git repository in the VLab with the software in it, or it has a community affiliated with it, then we would provide, we're going to provide links so that when you click on this project, you could actually go to the VLab community that's affiliated with this project, or you could go to the, the software repository on the Redmine side as well. So it's sort of like a close integration between this repository and the other aspects of the VLab. So it's sort of seamless and free-flowing. So those of you who are familiar, have seen other demos, or actually maybe operating in the VLab now, know that there's software. There's a lot of other tools that are designed to be project tools that are the project owners could be already taking advantage of. But right now it's sort of standalone, and we're not requiring that anything else in terms of integration. But that would go a long way to making this even more of an integrated and useful tool for basically project managers and project owners.
Hey, Steve, John again.
Yeah.
If you remember the old OSIP days, we had similar types of information in terms of tracking projects there. What I'm hoping here is that we don't come around later with the National Weather Service saying that the CARDS system requires the same kind of thing. Do you know anything about that, Steve?
Yeah. So when we've already talked, it's been a while now, with the CARDS people, and I put that in quotation marks because I'm not even sure they still are the same group of people, but the former OSIP, Cindy Woods and Carlos.
Yeah.
And so we're in the ground floor with Carlos on the CARDS system, and it works so that it would be in the same format. At the moment, I don't know what the status is of CARDS, but I would fight very hard to have anybody stand up a separate database that was radically different from this one, gathering the same types of information. I would throw up my arms and I'd burst into Louis Uccellini's office with my hair on fire if that were the case. So I absolutely hear you, John. Hear of something like that already taking place, let me know immediately so that we can avert disaster.
Yeah, I would follow you right in there with my hair on fire, because I'm not going to do this twice into two databases.
Yeah.
So, John, this is Ken. My discussions with John Tenhove, I had asked him about CARDS and where all this was going, and my impression is that is at a much higher level, and that it really is not meant for at the actionable projects, but more at the looking at a Weather Service Council level decisions, discussions.
Good, good.
And so, and I believe John Tenhove is probably the best point of contact right now for that.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, like at this point, and this database is not intended to be any reflection of like a gate or a process, or all we're trying to do is capture how these projects are moving along, however they're moving along, whatever process determines how they move along. It's not, we're not, other than just approving that the data that you're entering in meets the most basic requirements, that's the only sort of oversight we're applying. We're really relying on the project owners, or in the case of your NWC group, your best discretion and the information you're providing. So just want to keep that in mind. This is not a gatekeeper sort of a function. We just want to know what the hell's going on, and that's enough for us.
Got it, Steve. I understand.
Okay, well, if there are any further questions as you go along, we're here Monday through Friday. The vlab.admin@noaa.gov email address will get any questions answered, or you can contact myself or John or Mike Giebler if you have specifics as well. You got any, and when you, if you submit a project, again, don't be bashful, don't be shy. There's no harm. We can always edit things, fix things. So when in doubt, hit the submit button and get something in, and we can always fix it if there's changes or tweaks that need to be made. But we're looking forward to seeing what shows up from the Water Center, and that you all are helping NOAA look good, helping Weather Service look good. I know there's a tremendous amount. I've already seen this from other parts of Weather Service. I mean, we just have no idea about the amount of work that's being done. It's quite impressive when you see it on a project-by-project basis. And I think NOAA does quite a lot for the level of funding that we get in this area. I think we probably back up very well against any other federal agency in this regard. We're very committed to the R&D and sort of pull out all stops to help things get along on a very limited budget.
Well, Steve and Mike and John, I really appreciate you doing this for us. I think it's a good introduction. It's very understandable, and I think we can act on it after we discuss it internally. So.
Fantastic, John. Appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks.